Welcome everyone to another edition of What Went Wrong, where I take a look at professional wrestling's history and pick out one aspect that could have worked, maybe even should have worked, but ultimately did not. And since it is Halloween, I thought, wouldn't it be great to do something related to something gone wrong that relates to the legendary career of The Undertaker. Now, The Undertaker is a legendary figure in the history of professional wrestling, arguably the greatest gimmick, greatest character of all time. And I'm not here to disparage him this time, but with the Undertaker character and just the very nature of the character, it opens the door for a lot of possibilities and different avenues that you can explore and allows for a lot more creativity. Sometimes this worked out very, very well, like the feud with Mankind or the feud with Kane or various other things that they've done with Taker throughout the years, whether it be kind of more on the supernatural side of things or a little bit wackier or whatever. Other ones did not work, like the Concrete Crypt match, or what I'm about to talk about today. Going all the way back to 1994, specifically the main event to SummerSlam, The Undertaker versus The Undertaker, the match where The Undertaker battled his evil clone in the closing bout of the WWE's biggest pay-per-view of the summer. This has notoriously been considered to be one of the worst matches in the history of the WWE. At the time, when he reviewed it, Dave Meltzer said it was arguably the worst match in the history of pay-per-view, which I'm thinking back. I'm trying to think if that was true or not. Well, I'm not sure. Maybe... probably not. I don't know. I could probably think of something worse. But the match did not go over well. And the fact that people still talk about it today as kind of a missed opportunity or something that just flat out did not work speaks volumes to just how much it really didn't work. But what I'm going to talk about today is some of the merits of the idea and of the angle itself, and talk about maybe some of the missteps that they took to make that match not work, and things that they could have avoided and made the match something worth watching or something worthwhile. Now, this goes all the way back to the beginning of the angle, where The Undertaker was defeated by Yokozuna in a casket match, the first ever true casket match. I know he had the coffin match with Kamala at Survivor Series 92, and there were various body bag matches with the Ultimate Warrior in 1991 and a few, on house show loops or whatever. But generally, like the one at Royal Rumble 94 was the first true casket match. And at least in WWE programming, they may have done it in other feds. I'm not sure, but anyway, Yokozuna won that match thanks to getting himself together an army of people, an army of heels to help him eliminate The Undertaker, and they destroyed Taker, and then you get that memorable ending where Undertaker rises to the heavens and says that his rebirth is coming, but Undertaker went away following the Royal Rumble event and wasn't seen. He missed WrestleMania that year, and there was no sign of The Undertaker. Until we get to what was probably my favorite part of the angle, and one that I thought was very, very cool, and really looking back on it with that perfect 2020 hindsight, it's an aspect to the angle that really gives me an idea of maybe where they should have gone with it. And that was the Undertaker sightings. I remember they were kind of weekly or maybe even like infrequent. I don't remember how often they did these, but they would do Undertaker sightings. They would do, it was almost like they had investigative reporting going around covering these people who claimed to have witnessed the Undertaker at various locations in America. I remember one that was like a school teacher talking to her class, and one of the kids was like, I saw the Undertaker sliding down the slide, which that's a hilarious visual if there ever was one. They interviewed like a fireman, I think they interviewed a butcher, and they're all like, yeah, I'm running my store here, and then all of a sudden you won't believe who just walks in. The Undertaker. He just walks in. And I thought that aspect to it, while I'm sure I just made it sound completely silly. That aspect to it, I think, is very interesting and heightens a lot of the mystery of where Undertaker is, what's he been doing, where's he been, is he a ghost that's just wandering around haunting people? Like, what exactly is going on here? And I really like that idea of the Undertaker's sighting. And I thought that was a great starting point to the angle and ultimately set it up where Ted DiBiase reveals that he is the one that's bringing the Undertaker back and ultimately brings back the Undertaker on that edition of the Heartbreak Hotel with Shawn Michaels and Diesel. And I remember watching this as a kid. I was 9 years old at the time. And immediately I took one look at Brian Lee in the Undertaker getup and I was like, that's not the Undertaker. Ted DiBiase's lying. And as a kid, that made the angle work for me because it put more heat on the heels. I'm like, DiBiase's lying. That's not the real Undertaker. And even though it looked like Undertaker had basically turned heel and was back to being a heel, I was like, no, that's not really Taker. It's not true, I tell you. And, you can't get anything past 9-year-old me. I'm too smart for this shit. But, yeah, so the stage was set for Paul Bearer to claim, try and gain control of the Undertaker back, which led to a few memorable bits in the build-up. But ultimately, Bearer realized that this Undertaker was not the true Undertaker, and then went to the graveyards to go call the spirit of the true Undertaker, and it was time for the Undertaker to come back. And then at SummerSlam, you had Paul Bearer's Undertaker, the true Undertaker, taking on Ted DiBiase's Undertaker, known by some as the Underfaker. So the stage was set for a very interesting and odd attraction for a pay-per-view. I was intrigued as a kid. I was like, how are they going to pull this off? This is just such a strange idea and so weird. And like I said, I really liked how the angle started, and I like the basic ideas, the basic brushstrokes of the story being told, with Ted DiBiase, the one who originally brought The Undertaker in, for those of you who remember Survivor Series 1990, bringing in his own version of The Undertaker that's bought and paid for and likes the money, which that seemed weird. I mean, that's another clue right there that's not really Taker. It's like, Taker wouldn't give a shit about money. This character? No, he's dead. What's he going to do with money? But anyway, I liked a lot of the basic ideas. Now, one thing that they did in the promotion and the build-up to this is that they worked in Leslie Nielsen. Now, I am going to tell you all right now that I have an undying love, respect, and appreciation for Leslie Nielsen. He was awesome in Airplane, one of the funniest roles in the history of comedy. His character in that film is just hysterical. If you've never seen Airplane, check it out. It's one of the early examples of me really falling in love with super dry, super straight humor, and that's why it works so well. He reads everything so straight that it crosses the bridge and becomes hilarious. I remember he was in the last episode of The Golden Girls where he married Dorothy. He was really funny in that. I remember him being in one of the first Mel Brooks movies I ever saw, Dracula Dead and Loving It, which admittedly is not one of the better Mel Brooks films. And I think if Leslie Nielsen had brought that dry straightness to his version of Dracula, I think that movie would have turned out much better. But yeah, I mean, I always felt like Leslie Nielsen was super funny, super talented. Police Squad, the Naked Gun movies, hilarious stuff. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Police Squad is unfortunate that only got 6 episodes. That's a crime, because it's one of the funniest shows of all time that didn't succeed. But then it ultimately got its own film franchise, so what do I know? So what I'm about to say, I'm not putting down Leslie Nielsen. I'm really not. And I don't necessarily have a problem with WWE using Leslie Nielsen. I'd be all for it. It's like, fuck, I love Leslie Nielsen. Go ahead and use him. I think using him in this angle, though, created a problem where, to me, in my mind, the return of The Undertaker, the mystery of where he's been and what he's been doing and all that stuff, to me that requires a little bit more importance put on to it. And it's something that, again, I'm speaking from the point of view of a 9-year-old. To me, it was something that I took semi-seriously. I was like, no, I want to know what he's up to, what he's doing, and all this other stuff. And when you throw Leslie Nielsen in there doing a bit, basically playing his character from Police Squad and the Naked Gun movies, it immediately kind of makes it a joke, and that takes away a lot of the seriousness that I feel like, and a lot of the grandiose, larger than life feel that the angle is supposed to have. Once you start having Leslie Nielsen going around tracking down The Undertaker and various other things, it immediately becomes a comedy and becomes a joke, and it kind of kills the mystique of the angle, I think is the word I'm looking for. Now, if you wanted to involve a celebrity, in this angle. And again, I'm going back to my youth here. My first idea, if you pitch this angle to 9-year-old me, it's like, all right, what celebrity would you get to add to this angle? Immediately, without even thinking about it, get Robert Stack. That's who you get to do some kind of a mystery angle. Because for those of you who are too young and don't remember, Unsolved Mysteries, which you can view on Amazon Prime, by the way. I love that. Oh God, especially around Halloween time, it's great going back and watching those. Robert Stack was the host of this crime show. Well, I call it a crime show, but it dealt with so many different things, called Unsolved Mysteries, which was kind of cut from the same cloth as like America's Most Wanted, where they tell all these stories about all these people that had done these horrible things, and the intent was to kind of solve the mysteries and get people to call in and give clues and let them know of the criminal's whereabouts or whatever. In addition to that, it also covered UFOs, aliens, ghost stories, ancient myths, local legends, disappearances, various other things. So there was really nothing off limits. As long as there was a mystery attached to it, Robert Stack would be the narrator and the host of whatever story was presented. And it was one of the scariest shows. I mean, that show gave me so many nightmares, and it was really, to be perfectly honest, it wasn't the ghost stories and it wasn't the UFO stories that scared me. It was always the real crime stories that scared me, because I just, at such a young age, I couldn't believe that people were capable of such horrible things. I could sit here all day. I could do an entire video of nothing but me recalling every Unsolved Mystery segment that gave me a fucking nightmare. I mean, throughout 3rd and 4th grade, I don't think I slept more than 2 or 3 nights a week, because I would watch Unsolved Mysteries and I'd be just done. I would be like, but I also weirdly had it in my head that it was my duty to watch shows like Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted. And Unsolved Mysteries, to me, if you combine like Robert Stack and Unsolved Mysteries with The Undertaker, to me it would be kind of a perfect marriage, because Unsolved Mysteries was a lot spookier than America's Most Wanted. It was a lot, had atmosphere to it. The music, I mean, anybody who watched that show can tell you the theme song was even scary and intimidating. It was just everything about it. It was just send chills up your spine, including Robert Stack's narration. Robert Stack's supposed to be the good guy, and even he was kind of intimidating. So I would have tried, you pitched this angle to me, I'd have been like, oh, can we reach out to the Unsolved Mysteries people and see if maybe they'll film a segment that will air on our TV, not on their show, but because they, that would be, I wouldn't, that would kind of weirdly like kill the integrity of the show, even though they do aliens and UFOs and ghost stories and all that other nonsense. If you start like pushing wrestling storylines on Unsolved Mysteries, but you can get like Robert Stack in the studio to do like cover like the history of the Undertaker, starting with like his loss at the casket match to what happened, and then get all the eyewitness reports of the Undertaker sightings. I think that would have been a great way to tie all of that together and incorporate Robert Stack in a way that would have enhanced the mystique rather than harmed it. And again, no knock on Leslie Nielsen or George Kennedy, who appeared at SummerSlam, but it was just, to me, it made it a comedy when the angle wasn't meant to be funny, and I think that was kind of, that clash there just didn't really work. Didn't work for me personally. Another thing that got in the way is that they gave this match the closing spot. Which wouldn't be so bad, except they had to follow Bret Hart and Owen Hart in a steel cage match for the WWF title, an angle that had been built up all year, had all the personal family grudge going into it. Owen defeated Bret at WrestleMania, so it had even more hype put into it. And, it was the ultimate battle between brothers, and they delivered one of the greatest cage matches of all time. Now, if you're to believe what was said on the Something to Wrestle With podcast, Bruce Pritchard said that the cage match went long and actually took time away from the Undertaker versus Undertaker match, and they ended up having to cut their match time in half. Which I don't know if the match going longer would have helped or hindered, but basically, they had to follow an amazing cage match. There was no way that this match was going to follow that cage match. So they had a crowd that was worn out from an amazing match, and it just, the crowd was just dead by the time you saw it. And I think I probably would have had the Undertaker match happen right before the main event. It's kind of like the main event, not buffer, I don't want to call it that, but kind of the, because really, and I'm going to talk about some of the things I did like about the match. Really, that match was all about the entrance. It was all about the return of the Undertaker. Which was great. All of that stuff was great. It was theatrical and over the top and crazy as hell, but it was great. One of the first early true great Undertaker entrances, and they really kept building the suspense there, where they cue the Undertaker's music and Paul Bearer comes out by himself, but then he signals to the back, and the Druids bring out the double deep, double wide casket the Undertaker was buried in at the Royal Rumble 94. And you're thinking, oh, the Undertaker's in the casket. And they do this whole long theatrical thing. They bring the casket down to the ring. Paul Bearer opens the casket and it explodes with smoke. And you're like, here comes Undertaker. He reaches into the casket and pulls out like a brand new fancy urn. And it's like, oh, well, that's not the Undertaker, but the new urn looks cool, but where's the Undertaker? Bearer goes into the ring. And the lights go out, and he opens up the urn, and a big light comes out of the urn, and it creates the illusion that the Undertaker's soul is escaping from the urn. This is all insane, but 9-year-old me, I loved all of this stuff. It was crazy, but it was great. And then the lights go out, you get the purple lighting, and out comes the true Undertaker silhouetted against the dark. Awesome entrance. All of that stuff was great, and a wonderful return for Taker in that regard. But really, that was the best part of the whole match, was the entrance. The entrance was really, and it's kind of what we all wanted. We wanted the true Undertaker back, and even just the visual of the, because one of my questions before the match is like, wait, if they're both dressed the same, how are we going to tell them apart? The real Undertaker came out with purple gloves and purple boots to set off the differences between him and the Undertaker. So I was like, oh, okay. That and the fact that Mark Calloway is clearly taller than Brian Lee, which also kind of killed the illusion a little bit when it wasn't that convincing. When the real Undertaker was noticeably taller than the fake Undertaker, and it kind of killed the illusion that they didn't look exactly alike. Now, I guess there's really no way to do that well unless both wrestlers are masked. But even Sin Cara, they tried to do it there, and it didn't even work that well with them. So, who knows? The Kane versus Kane, yeah, the doppelganger feud never really works out, does it? Like Kane versus fake Kane, that didn't work out. Sin Cara versus Black Sin Cara, that one didn't work out. But I guess this was the original example of just don't do doppelganger angles because it doesn't work. But I also like the finish to the match, because this was the first time where we saw the flip over tombstone counter from Undertaker, where he flipped over, tombstoned the fake Undertaker, then tombstoned him 2 more times, put him away, 1, 2, 3, it was over. Match was fairly quick, but the crowd, I think, was tired, and also the match just wasn't that great. But again, it was all about the entrance more than anything else. But the fact that the match fell flat, I think can be chalked up to a lot of the things I've already mentioned, but also, 2 guys that were wrestling the exact same style, and it may be the best way to go. Again, like I said, don't have it be the closing match. But also, maybe make it just a flat-out squash. Just let The Undertaker destroy the fake Undertaker. Maybe go shorter. Maybe, just have Undertaker destroy him, hit all his spots. Then maybe, the fake Undertaker hits a tombstone out of nowhere. And then you get that spot where the real Undertaker sits up, and the fake Undertaker gets frustrated, again signifying that he wasn't really the Undertaker anyway, because Undertaker would never get frustrated like that, at least back then. And then do the flip over tombstone finish and do the 3 tombstones to put him away. Keep it fairly quick. I think that would have been the better way to go, because again, I think what we all wanted out of this initially was just to have the real Undertaker back. Because like I said, I knew right away when they debuted him that wasn't really Undertaker, the DiBiase Undertaker. I was like, that's a fake. Fake! That's not the real thing. So we wanted a grand return for Undertaker, and I think maybe going the squash match route would have worked. Definitely not having it as the main event would have helped out as well. Not having to follow that cage match. So, yeah, those are I guess that's about it as far as the things that went wrong with this match. The build-up, they had some great ideas, wasn't executed well. I think Leslie Nielsen's involvement kind of made it sillier than it should have been. Again, I would have preferred Robert Stack. And the match had to follow an amazing 5-star classic. It also suffered from the fact that I don't think anybody was convinced by the dual Undertaker facade that they were trying to portray, and the fact that both guys basically wrestled the exact same style, and it just didn't, the match itself just didn't click. Now, am I going to sit here and say it's one of the worst matches of all time, like Meltzer said, or one of the worst pay-per-view main events? I mean, it's one of those matches. It was what it was. It wasn't like, I don't look back on it as one of like the worst of the worst. It's one that I look back on as kind of a missed opportunity. I'm like, that could have been better. Like, that's one of those, like, they probably could have executed that better. Again, Robert Stack would have fixed everything, I swear to you. But good news is they kind of got the Undertaker versus Undertaker feud right in '98 when they brought in Kane, because really, Kane basically turned out to be, in those early days, was like a red Undertaker, doing a lot of the same things that Taker did, but maybe with a little bit more power, whereas Taker was more athletic of the two. And then you get that match at WrestleMania 14, which is one of my favorite matches in WrestleMania history, one of my favorite build-ups in WrestleMania history as well. So there you go. Maybe they learned their mistakes. They learned from their mistakes in '94 and kind of corrected and did it right in '97 and '98. So good on them for that. But that concludes this edition of What Went Wrong. Thank you all for watching. I've got a few more videos lined up for you over the next few weeks or so, so stay tuned for all of that.